Hey everybody, good evening. This is actually probably one of my only evening ones. I usually call this the dawn patrol. I don't know if this is the dusk retreat or something, but
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's a night.
Um,
It's our night march.
all right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We're gonna take
Um,
Wellington by surprise in the morning.
yeah, but we'll drink in the meantime.
Of course,
Um,
we're
so
French.
Mark, absolutely welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you,
Um,
Peter.
you are a legend. Shall we say
Aw,
that? Shall we say that? Yeah.
I'll take it. I mean,
Okay.
I'm blushing. See me blush. See how pink I'm getting?
Yeah.
I'm blushing. I'm
Yeah.
blushing.
And you have your official Napoleonic hoodie. Is
Yes,
that
I do, and
actually
I
okay?
also have my high school military. I went to a Catholic boys military school. There's my shake. So I have the shako with the plume. All right, and I have the saber, so I can lead the charge. Actually, I often, for years, when I've had a tough day, I will put on the March Consolera Marengo, which is the attack of the old guard in the movie Waterloo. And I'll
Right.
put on the tunic, and I'll put on the hat, I'll take the sword, and I will march in time to it. And when I
Mhm.
told that to the guys at Avalon Digital who are computerizing the game, they made that the opening theme of the game.
I thought I recognized it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah,
so let's take a little trip through time, if you will, right?
sure.
Um, where why War and Peace? We're
Okay,
gonna be
all right, okay. As a kid, I played toy soldiers. Right. And when I was 13, my father said, "You're a man now. Got to get rid of all the toys." You know, kids came from blocks around to take out all my army men, all my toy rifles, all my stuff. I kept a few games. All right. When I was 17, Willie Brandt was Man of the Year in Time magazine. On page 68 was Brigadier General Peter Young pushing toy soldiers across a billiard table in a pub in England. And I
Mhm.
went to my dad and I threw it down and said, "Dad, he is a British officer, a general. He was in the war with you. If he can play toy soldiers, I can play toy soldiers."
Awesome.
So I went out and I got a bunch of the old Airfix, Napoleonic stuff, painted them up and played. And my friend and I, Nino, we made some little home rules, with dice and toothpicks and stuff like that, real simple stuff. When it came down to college, I had a choice between Georgetown and Boston College, both offering partial scholarships. But I had written to Peter Young, who I written to the Time magazine, to the correspondent, to Peter Young, asking him, did he know anybody in the States who made those toys? He gave me Duke Siegfried in California. I said, "Duke, do you know anybody in either Washington or Boston who plays this stuff?" He said, "Yeah, I got a friend of mine in Washington, D.C. named Kurt Johnson. He writes history books. He's a history teacher, and he has a big game club." That's what decided me to go to Georgetown,
Oh wow.
because I knew that. And the day I got there, my parents dropped me off at the dorm. I didn't even unpack. I got on my bike and I pedaled 3 miles uphill to Kurt's house.
So were you officially a member of GOOS? Were you officially a member of the Georgetown University Wargaming Society or not? Or had it
Oh,
existed at that point?
no, it didn't exist at the time.
Okay.
It was just me and a bunch of guys on the floor of my dorm. But okay, so go through all this. I go through high school, college. I'm playing miniatures. I'm playing board games. I played Avalon Hill games when I was 13. I went to the military school I went to on an optional mandatory Saturday morning class with Brother Aloysius. We had to do essays, and my friend Dan stands up and says, "I just got a game called Waterloo."
Mm-hmm.
I played with him that weekend. Never turned back.
All right.
All right, so I played all the Avalon Hill, all the SPI stuff, and after college, I got married. After college, I got the army. I got married. I was working, and I was living in the DC suburbs. And I wrote a letter to Avalon Hill in Baltimore and said, I've been in the area for years. I've played your games. I love your stuff. Can I come up and see what the place looks like and what you guys do?
Mm-hmm.
And Don Greenwood sent me a nice letter. So yeah, come on up, one day. I got up there, had a nice tour, and I'm talking to Don, and Tom Shaw comes out, the vice president.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I'm going to lunch, bring your friend. So we go to this really nice the Harvey House around the corner. Really great, old fashioned, like been there since the 1800s. Guys have their names carved in desks. We're sitting there, and the soup comes, and halfway to my mouth with this wonderful she crab soup, Tom Shaw says, "What's this game you want to pitch us?" I didn't come there with. I had no idea.
Yeah,
I
nothing.
didn't come there. I had nothing. But I'm a journalist. I'm a writer. I've always been a freelance writer, so I know an opportunity when I see one.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. So between the soup and dessert, I invented War and Peace.
Oh wow.
And the whole thing up. And after coffee, we went back to Avalon Hill, and I signed a contract. And that's how I started designing board games.
That's awesome. That's
Purely
awesome.
right
Great
place,
story.
right time. You know.
Did anything fundamentally change from that, or was it the kind of like the innovation, the spirit of that, or the kind of like the energy from that
I
was
was just
golden and or
I was just so excited because
right.
I had actually designed a board game in my last year of college that I played at a game store in Silver Spring, Maryland. I had done it for the kids in the game store thing. It was called The Dark Lord. It was a hex-based War of the Ring kind of thing.
Right.
And the owner had a friend at Citadel Games. They contracted it. They bought it. They gave me $100, earnest money. But they lost the legal battle to SPI. SPI got the battle for the rights for War of the Ring. So
Okay.
so I sold my first design for $100, but it never got published. And they told me to keep the money. They were just, they were happy with me. So, but I hadn't even thought about it after that. And the day at Avalon Hill was just, I just want to see the guys who made the games and play the games,
Right. Right.
And it just really, it went from there. Seriously. I got so excited and so jazzed about it. Cause I mean,
So what fundamentally, if anything, changed between that initial pitch, if you will? Obviously, something had to be changed a little bit. Like, so this is like the whole
everything. I made the whole damn thing up. I had no idea about the board size, the counters, the scale. I basically it's kind of the way I got through my Spanish oral on my fifth try. I failed my Spanish orals 4 times at Georgetown. Fifth one, they asked me one question. I talked for 30 minutes and didn't shut up. And they finally said, "Okay, go." And it was kind of the same thing. In high school, I did a report for my history teacher, a coach, and I was one of the top 4 guys in my class every year. But I had been a rough time, so I kind of really just had to wing it. And I gave the report, and the coach goes, "Mr. McLaughlin, I should punch you in the mouth for this report, but my hand would come out ringing with bullshit."
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you were from up Albany way, as we
yeah.
say.
I grew up in Albany. I went to the Irish Christian Brothers, St. John Baptist de La Salle school, Christian Brothers Academy, which had been there since the 1840s, which my uncle had been kicked out of in the 1940s. And so I loved it. I loved military school. I just adored it. I had so much fun.
Wow.
I loved high school. I loved it. It was so great. I had an early acceptance at Purdue. I turned it down so I could finish my senior year. Because by then I had the plume. I got a plume. How do you not say when you get a plume?
Who else gets to do this, right?
Yeah, I got a plume. I mean, the dress blues and dress whites, and then the class A's, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was playing I get to play soldier.
Right.
Marching in
parades.
There?
Were there any like military history courses like electives?
Oh yeah. We had a retired National Guard colonel who'd been a sergeant at Saipan, where he got in several awards, and he did a military history class twice a week. My favorite one was when he stood there and he pulled the pin out of a hand grenade, threw it into the room. One guy fainted, 3 guys ran off, everybody screamed, and my friend Dave Domel jumped on the grenade.
And you laughed horribly.
and the colonel's laughing. And he says, of course, Domel. Domel went on to become the principal of my school. He went to college in Siena, came back as a teacher, became a coach, became the principal. Colonel Smith, he would have us, make, dioramas and maps. And of course, I had toy soldiers. I had books I could read.
Right.
And I still remember, one time, Brother Brendan ran the class. And he said, "Okay, the colonel says I'm supposed to ask you in this test to name a famous turning movement of the Civil War." And I put down Grant's March to the James. And he comes back and says, "That's wrong. The answer's supposed to be Chancellorsville." I said, "You didn't say." I said, "But Grant's March to the James is a classic." I went and I got Bruce Catton's book, showed it to him, and Brother Brendan gave me an A for teaching him something. Because I devoured history as a kid. I had an adult library card when I was 10 because I had read all the kids' history, and I'm a voracious reader of history. I love history. I like historical fiction too. Like, for example, right now I'm reading this 4-book series by Simon Scarrow,
Nice.
600 pages each.
Right.
There's 4 books. It takes Napoleon and Wellington on a parallel course all the way from their birth,
Oh,
literally,
that's cool.
to
That's interesting.
Waterloo. And and Sky Mosquitoes does a lot of Roman science fiction and Roman mysteries. But it's a great read. And I tend to read what I'm working on. So like I've been playtesting War and Peace, alpha testing it every day for at least an hour. So
Awesome.
to keep me in the mood, I'm reading that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
And of
yeah,
course.
but again, I do all periods, and like my fifth novel, historical novel in the Throne of Darius series just came out, and that's about the Greeks and Persians who fight against Alexander,
Mm-hmm.
because as an Iranian roommate of mine in college told me, in my country, Alexander is not so great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A little upstart. Just
Well,
like,
well, he's a nasty, terrible, murderous, crazy. I can't say anything nice about Alexander. He was brave. He was
hey, you
courageous.
could
He was
even say the
brave.
same thing of some Corsican fellow, right?
Okay. Napoleon has his good points, but yeah, he's a tyrant.
Yeah.
And Napoleon. Well, the best example is in 1803, Beethoven writes a symphony and dedicates it to Bonaparte.
Mm-hmm.
When Bonaparte's declared emperor, he changes the name of the symphony.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother Lucien, who had helped him become the first consul, who had helped run the coup, when Napoleon became emperor, Lucien broke with his brother. And that's the thing. It's Napoleon in his early stages is a brilliant general, although Egypt is, that's a whole different story. That's
Right.
just
Right.
it.
That's just logistics. Yeah.
Well, but
Well,
no. Well, he abandoned his army there,
right. Sure.
but anyway, a brilliant general, and he knew how to play the politics, and he became first consul. And here's the difference between him and George Washington. And this is why Churchill said that what made George Washington a great man is George Washington had power and then set it down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made it, because George Washington believed in the legend of Cincinnatus, the Roman general who was a farmer, who was called back, made dictator, won a war, went back to farming. Washington actually founded the Society of Cincinnatus for American and French officers and their descendants. And I did research in their museum and headquarters in Washington, D.C. for a book I wrote on the Irish Brigades of France and Spain, because the Dillon Regiment of Ireland, of the French Army, which is an Irish regiment, fought in Savannah in 1778, as well as other French-Irish regiments. But so yeah,
So
that's a different. That's what
to
makes okay. But that's what makes Napoleon. He turns. It's
right. I mean, you could even say Alexander did almost the exact same thing,
well,
right? After.
Well, Alexander from the get-go was a little shit.
Yeah.
there was no. I mean, part
right,
of it was
but his cohorts were
part of it was
farmers and.
Well, yeah, one of the things you got to figure, Alexander has to live up to his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's like those kids of famous actors or famous politicians or famous writers following in their father's footsteps, who have to show they're better than their dad,
Right.
one up on them. And besides, Alexander's favorite child was his sister, Sinane, who was Alexander's father actually thought Alexander was effeminate and a mama's boy, and his daughter Sinane was from another wife, an Illyrian princess, was a warrior. He trained her as a warrior, and there's a battle in which she actually saved his life, very much like that scene in Lord of the Rings where Owen stands over the king when the dazzle comes down. That's straight out of Sinane saving Alexander's dad in a battle, which is in a short story I wrote, which is available in a book called Friends and Fellows of Alexander the Great. Shameless pitch.
Yeah. There's no shame in pitching.
Yeah.
So back to War and Peace.
Sure,
how long did it take to refine it? Like between how many different versions do you remember existing? And
okay, the original I had a
contract.
Okay, the original I had a contract, and they wanted it done in a year and a half, and I was doing great. But in the last 6 months, they said, "Oh, we want a campaign game." I said, I didn't pitch a campaign game. I said, I pitched, bunch of scenarios, monthly turns. You can sit down for 2 hours and play,
Mm-hmm.
and you can with every scenario except the Spanish one, which is a long one.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, we want a campaign game. I had 6 months to literally cobble together a campaign game,
Was it
which
all originally the same scale? Even was
well,
it
I
more?
kept all the game rules, but I had it. So instead of playing, 12 turns for a year, you can play up to 120 turns over 10 years. So
Mm-hmm.
it was mostly how to
Mm-hmm.
fix the moving from year to year, and of course the politics, which if you're playing multiplayer is not hard because everybody can make their own decisions.
Right.
But I had to,
Right.
but I had to,
Right.
but I had to put it in there that France and England could not be allied. Period. Otherwise, it's not the
Right.
Napoleonic
Did
Wars.
it
Otherwise,
had it originally included all the the minor powers that it ended up with, or did
well,
that
they
get
were they
kind
were
of?
all in there, but never as players. They're all as
Yeah.
like that's why they're
Yeah.
colored the
Satellites. Yeah.
satellites, all satellites.
Yeah.
And the idea was it would be France versus England, and then the Allied coalition would be run by the British until more players came in. But Austrians and Russians would start out as anti-French. Prussians would be
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what I did. Actually, the Napoleonic Wars I did for GMT, that
Mm-hmm.
started out as an Avalon Hill game because in 1997, Don Greenwood took me to lunch. Everything happens at lunch.
All
And
right.
he says, I want you to take the We the People system of Mark Herman,
Mm-hmm.
marry it to your War and Peace,
Mm-hmm.
make a multiplayer game of the entire Napoleonic Wars that you can finish in a day and rules you could read during a typical sit in the bathroom.
Right. I was going to ask you if they were
Yeah.
somewhat interrelated,
Oh
but
yeah. The
yeah.
original the original map for the game, for the original Napoleonic Wars, was that map behind you with an overlay, and I put in the point to points in that with colored tape, and initially used War and Peace pieces, and then of course I had to make the cards. So that's that. So it yeah, that's the father,
Right. Right.
and then honestly, after the last time I played War and Peace, that version behind you, was 1985. Because
Mm.
it came out the first day I played the actual physical game. I was at my mother-in-law's house listening to the radio, and that was the day the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. And
Mm-hmm.
and I was working the Afghan desk back in Washington, so I had to go back the next day. All right, so between then and 85, I played it quite often. But then I started designing other games. And of course, when you start designing other games, you have less and less time to play the older ones. So the last time I played that version was 1985. And then literally 20 years later, no, more than 20 years later, actually almost 25 years later, this guy named John Gant said, hey, I've been working on a new version of your game.
Mm-hmm.
And by then I knew there was a third and a fourth edition, a rule set on the internet, which were basically my game, but they were trying to fix the campaign, because the campaign game in that is
When had the second edition come out? Was that an
oh, it came out
original?
that came out like a year later, because it was not so much a second edition as it was a reprint with a few
Okay.
minor typos. It didn't change much. It added a couple scenarios. The scenarios I had written up in the general, they actually put in that
Yeah.
booklet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's all
All
the
right.
second edition ones. That came out like 2 years later.
And at that point, had any additional rules been added to that second edition, or no? Can't
Only the
remember.
stuff that in the optional rules,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
still in the
Okay.
optional rules of the new game.
Yeah.
And so again, and this guy, showed the game to me, and he called it and he showed it to me. It was a beautiful design. It was, and it kept all my rules, all the basic stuff, and then it had the really cool campaign game, which he'd been working on for like 10 years, and he play tested a lot with people, and it was beautiful. And he almost GMT looked at it. They sent him an editor. They almost did it, but they couldn't come to an agreement over how to do it.
And what was the exact that year? What was that year? If you recall,
I
was
think
it
it was in
2000 and
2010 or 11.
okay? All
Yeah,
right,
it was
I was even
okay. So that kind of fell apart. But a couple years later, but I come in contact with Sean,
hmm
and a couple years later, they had creative differences. GMT and the editor and Fred had a three-way creative differences, because again with GMT, I love GMT to death. They have certain parameters, and
sure.
especially
It's
then
their
they have
formula,
a lot of it is physical.
Okay.
How
Yeah.
what
Sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and when you go beyond, and they at that time they weren't as diverse as they are now, and they're much more diverse now. But they weren't. They had like we can only have so much of this, so much of that. And John said,
Would you
no,
say? Would you say by that time in board game development, things were not necessarily easier, but just quicker? Like the development cycle was quicker by that point,
Oh
or no?
no, no, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I mean, uh, I've had games take years, years. I mean, like
Right.
the
Okay.
ancient civilizations of the Middle East, which just went to the printer last month.
That looks very good, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I finished that game. I finished and submitted it to the editor 2 years ago. 2 years ago. It
Wow.
took those 2 years for tweaks and tweaks and not
And that
playtesting, just mostly art and tweaks and
is
language and
that directly a related to ancient civilizations of the inner sea, or no?
yeah. Oh, it's the exact same system,
Right.
but totally different map,
Right.
totally different civilizations,
Of
different
course.
scenarios, different scale.
Oh, okay. That's
They don't feed
right.
together.
Right.
They're
Right.
separate.
Right.
And of course, every card in ancient civilizations of the Middle East has a quote from the King James Bible.
Mm,
All 110 of them. And instead of building wonders, you build temples to your favorite deity, which
nice.
gives you powers.
Okay.
And you can play all of Alexander the Great's campaigns uh, in both games. In the original game, you can play all the way up to through Egypt and Isis and
Hmm.
all that.
Hmm.
And in this one, it's the whole Persian Empire, so you can go
Hmm.
all the way from Greece to India and back again.
Nice.
And
Nice.
you can the scenarios go it costs us 4,000 years, so you can be Solomon
Right.
and
Right.
build
Oh,
his temple.
yeah. There's not that many that cover that well, so
Yeah,
that's
well,
interesting.
I remember like Richard Berg's
Yeah.
Genesis
Yeah.
did it
Yeah.
pretty well. And there's a game Chariot Kings, I think, by Ed Wimble's guys, which is
Okay.
pretty good.
Hmm.
And of course, there's the original Civilization, the original
Right.
Avalon Hill Civilization,
Right.
which
Right. Right. Right.
I loved
Yeah.
and
Right.
all that stuff.
Hmm.
But no, so no, everything it takes time. It's part of it is production schedules, part of it's printers, like especially with
What is
COVID. Ooh,
what is the part of game development that you like the most? Or
research.
in okay.
it,
Okay.
and like I remember that I once gave a speech to my daughter's eighth grade class. Bring your father to work to school day,
Hmm.
and they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a journalist," because that's mostly what I've been. I'm a freelance journalist who designs games and writes books. And
Hmm.
as I get older, I'm doing less and less journalism and more games and books because I want to do more for myself and for the rest of the world.
Awesome.
And I've covered wars and terror and um,
Right.
everything you can imagine. You
You're
know,
right.
um, so I used to work for the Associated Press and things like that. But anyway, so I said to someone, I said, these kids, I said, well, I write articles, for newspaper. Well, how long? I said, well, most articles are about 500 to 1,000 words. What do you get paid? I said, I get paid 45 cents a word, which I
Hmm.
said for 1,000 words is $450. Wow, for an hour's work? I said, no. For every hour I spend writing, I spend 8 hours researching. And they went, oh. um,
Like a balloon.
yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
boom, and the research never stops because you have to know when to stop
Right.
research and go to
That was my
design.
next question.
Same thing with books. You have to know when to stop the research and start writing. But while you're writing and while you're designing and while you're playtesting, you keep reading because you find new stuff. And believe me, when it comes to the Napoleonic Wars, there are literally more books on Napoleon in the Library of Congress than there are books on Jesus Christ.
Mm.
I'm seriously. It's like
Hmm.
five. It's like 2 to 1. Like and there are and Napoleonic gamers. Gamers, old school gamers especially, are very very. They know what they like. They know their stuff. They all know this much of a certain thing in particular, and they want to see that. And Napoleonic gamers will rip you a new one if you get something wrong. And they'll
Right.
say,
And
"Aha!"
I've wanted to ask you. I mean, at the scale of War and Peace,
Yeah.
that's difficult to simulate. No, that's a could be a
Well,
bad word,
well,
but um,
okay. I really don't like the word simulation.
right.
Simulation means okay. War and Peace is a game. It's sort of
Right.
basically, it's kind of like a game about a movie about the Napoleonic Wars.
Sure, and that's the
You
fun
know,
part,
it's
right?
the fun.
I
Yeah, it's
mean,
fun. I've played big, massive, games that just fall of their own weight.
right.
And I won't mention them because I don't want to disparage anybody else's
Right.
designs because I've played their designs and there's always something good in everything. But one of the reasons I design a lot of games is because I play something and I see a topic, I want to play in it, and I'm not satisfied. Or I think I could do something different with this. And one of the beauties about board games is just like miniatures games. If you don't like the rules, you
Make
can
up your own.
change them. It's
Yeah.
hard to do in a computer game because you have to do, although the people who can
Yeah.
mod and do stuff, you know.
The one thing I'll say about War and Peace, it's very, it is a bit modular. I don't even know if you, I mean, you might not
Oh
have
yeah,
even originally, you might not even originally have approached it that way. It just
no,
kind
I
of
did, I did,
because, all right,
I did.
be,
The idea was to do a
it's not,
scenario.
it's
I'm sorry.
detailed too, which is interesting. I like games that are detailed within their simplicity, right? And it kind of exemplifies that. It's you
Thank
have
you. Appreciate
there's a lot baked in without over complications.
it.
So
Thank you. I
it
appreciate that.
yeah.
That's because I actually I don't play hex and counter games. So I don't play
I don't
traditional.
normally either, and I was attracted to this one.
I used to play traditional hex and counter games up until the early '80s, and then I started getting my head to explode. Um, and I cannot play ASL. I've tried. I just
Okay,
it's beyond.
that's a whole
It's a
interview in
beautiful
itself.
game. Guys love it. My good friend Chuck, who runs a game garage every week, he runs convention. He loves it. He's great.
Right.
The game, maybe it's because I do miniatures, probably why. But
Mhm.
it's a great design, but it's not for me. Um, so like other games that people love, they're for them. They're not for me, and my games aren't for everybody. I don't.
What was your first official actually published miniatures game that you had played? Just completely sorry for the sidebar, but what was the first miniatures game that you bought?
Um, like the club and one of Featherstone's books.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I forget which one. It was one of the old ones back way back in the '70s.
Right.
And then the club I played with in DC when we went to Georgetown, they used a set of rules called Kriegspiel, which were
Yeah.
published.
Right.
And then of course I've played Shako 2,
Right.
Empire 1, 2, and 3,
So
Empire
this
4,
is right. I was
Empire
about to
5,
ask, but
Empire 5, which is the French on roller skates.
what is your favorite Napoleonic wargaming rule set at each general scale?
Miniatures.
Boom. Yes. Go.
All right. Okay. Actually, club rules.
Oh. Okay.
The guys I'm with, and I think you'll find this most places that so many guys will try so many different sets of rules, and some guys will like them, some guys won't. Some guys will like them for a while. They'll want to try something a little different. And
Right.
so basically, if you play with the same bunch of guys long enough, somebody's going to make club rules. My friend Arafan Gregory, whom I game with every Friday night, he has two sets of home rules. One of which he played with his club in Arizona before he moved to New Hampshire. Another he's made up since then. One's for 15 millimeters, one's for 28 millimeters. They're similar
Okay.
but different. And we played those a lot. I was a playtester for Napoleon at War, the Spanish set of rules, which is a nice set of rules. I've done Empire. I used to play A to Z Napoleonics, which was the Connecticut Game Club. Andy Zartolis, A to Z, wrote the set of rules with Phil Sparrow, which was a great set of miniatures rules. When I play them, because that's what the guys in the club play. I played Shako and Shako 2 with the designer. And they're lovely. I played Fred Vietmeyer's Column Line and Square back in the '70s, and even again briefly in the 2000s. With the great vortex of doom in the middle of the table where everything gets sucked in.
What I found with local wargaming groups is there's usually one or two games of a particular scale. They usually mix those two together, and then they just completely modify it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I mean, my favorite set of miniatures rules ever is Flames of War. I think it's brilliant. Wow. I love it. I have 13 cases, 4 levels tall, filled with miniatures I painted. I have 500.
What aspect of it? What aspect of it do you like?
It's the only World War II game I ever got that I wanted to paint soldiers for.
Interesting.
Because it's
Have you tried Chain of Command as well?
Oh, I do like Chain. I do like Chain of Command. I started with I did do Disposable Heroes because the group I played with did that. We moved from there to Bolt Action. Bolt Action is a nice set of rules. It's okay. It doesn't sing to me. Chain of Command by the Two Fat Lardies is a delight. It's Bolt Action done right. And I do that sometimes. I actually did paint 3 armies for that, 100 figures each of Africa Corps, French 1940, and Italian Western Desert. My armies in the World War II are all even the 15s. My biggest army is the Soviet army, of course. My favorite army is the Italian Western Desert. My second favorite is the French 1940 because why not? They're French. And then I also have a British Indian Fourth Indian Division I painted up. So I love that stuff. I love the Desert War especially. But no, Flames of War means a lot of fun. It's a World War II
Right.
game that actually has fun. It moves. You finish a game. You feel good afterwards. It's light.
Well,
And you can
we were talking before we started about
yeah
Black Seas and so forth. So,
yeah
I
you
mean,
can teach
Flames of War is similar where it
yeah
kind of
you
started.
yeah you can
Yeah.
teach and you can teach it to people in 5 minutes. Like
Right.
my game club, we had a game day at a local hobby store, the Guns of August on August 6th. I ran a Flames of War game called Clown Cars and Cruiser Tanks, which is
Hmm.
British and Italians, as you'd imagine. And I had 6 guys playing. None of them would ever play Flames of War. Within 5 minutes, they were doing fine. I had a great time. Then I did the Plains of Abraham using the home set of rules I wrote 50 years ago in college, which we still play with because they're very simple, like 4 pages of rules.
Hmm.
And so yeah, but no, I love Plains of War. I like Chain of Command a lot. I like Plains of War more because it's epic. It's
Sure.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's got different
Chain of
scale.
Command is it basically it's the difference between watching an episode of Vic Morrow in combat as to
Hmm.
watching The Longest Day.
There was another one. What was it? Was there was Battlefront W?
Oh, Battlefront, Battle Group,
Yeah.
the Command Decision, uh, Uncle Wiggily Goes to Tokyo. I don't know. So I mean, I played a lot. I played, and I'll go to conventions and I'll intentionally try something I've never done before because that's the greatest place to test drive a set of rules. Because at a
Have you?
convention, oh, sorry.
I don't know why I'm thinking about, but have you ever played Sharp Practice by Two Fat Lorries as
Oh
well?
yeah,
Sharp.
My friend Arafan did that.
They're
Did a
fun.
couple of those. Yeah, they're like.
Yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah,
fun.
I'm a big Sharps fan. I read all the Sharps books and even
Hmm.
the little books, and I have all the DVDs. I got the wooden rifle case which has the DVDs in, plus the other stuff he did, the prequels and the postquels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no, I'm a big fan of Over the Hills and Far Away.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so no, I know no the two fat lardies are very smart guy gamers, and their heart is big, and it's
Right.
meant you play their games for fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like I play Ancients, and so many times in so many different sets of rules of Ancients, and I played a lot. DBA, DBM. I like Field of Glory a lot.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
did 250 games of that for years. We're not playing ADLG, Art de la Guerre, which we like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when you get into Ancients rules, you always get a lot of arguments and a lot of quarter inches.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Whereas so I that's one
I don't
aspect.
think that's
Even
just Ancients, by the
well, no,
way.
I find it more. I find it more in Ancients because if you're shooting at somebody, it's not it's a different whole different faction.
Right.
But when you
Sure.
have to I'm hitting your corner at a 40. I still remember I played a game at a convention, a DBA, and I took a Roman unit and I was this way, and I went into a 90-degree, hit the guy in the flank. You can't do that. So what do you mean? It's just boom, I just pivoted. He says, no, you see, to move that way would be 2.2 inches, and you can only move 2 inches. So I said, oh, I see. Okay, Marius, take 2 steps back.
Now hit.
Yeah, yeah. But again, and that's why I don't play. I run tournaments, but I don't play in tournaments
Yeah.
because
Sure. Okay.
I mean you can meet some wonderful people in tournaments who are there for fun, but you're guaranteed somewhere on the line to
Yeah,
meet the
you'll get the
guy
power gamers. Yeah,
to meet
that's
to
just.
meet the to meet the guy who you wouldn't game with in your club,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
or the
Yeah.
guy who makes it work, not fun.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I want to
Everything
have
has
fun.
that. Everything has that. But
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there's a friend of mine, my friend Andy, my late friend Andy. We were doing Carnage and Glory, and I know Nigel who designed Carnage and
Yeah.
Glory. It's a nice set of rules,
Yeah.
and
That's
we
the
used to play it a
computer
lot. Yeah,
system. Yeah.
computer system. We used to play. I still play it like twice a year at my friend Rich's when he
Mhm.
invites us because lunch is served. And we were playing. They had done. He was going to do the Battle of Waterloo, and they did one weekend. I couldn't be there. They had 3 guys who were the French against my friend Andy and Phil and John, another guy John Sneed, who were really good gamers. And the next week I was able to come and play. I was going to be I would be the 4th Frenchman. Well, the other 3 guys didn't show up because they'd done such a bad job. I said, it looks like Marshall's Mole, Larry, and Curly aren't
Mhm.
coming. And the French position was hopeless. And and I'm there, and Andy says, "Well, do you want to play it out?" I said, "Sure." And they figure the English guys are in there, they're laughing. and then I attack. And
Mm.
the other two guys, next to Andy, are saying, McLaughlin's attacking with that army?
Yeah, the only
And,
thing I ever
and,
had.
and, and Andy says, you don't know McLaughlin. If he had two drummers and a fifer, he'd attack. I said, who needs a fifer?
The only thing I ever. That's nice.
I'm the kind of guy at conventions
Scruffy.
they ask to be Custer.
Mm.
We want you to be Custer. You'll be a good Custer because
Right.
or Nay. We want you to be Nay. The bravest of the brave, the dumbest of the dumb.
With Carnage and Glory, I don't know if it was just horrible bad luck, but I always found that any movement was, I don't know what it was, but I always felt like the negative factors of movement were, of course, you could probably argue historical, but I always felt like you basically, if you stood still, you stood a chance, is the way I used to describe Carnage.
Yeah, well, in Carnage and Glory, if you do anything which requires you to tell the game master you're doing something, you take fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
If you just walk or stand still, you're fine. Or if you walk and then stand still, you're fine. But God forbid you want to cross a fence,
Yeah,
make a left turn.
I don't think it would do
shoot
well
at somebody
on the last day of Gettysburg. Probably would not be done well on that game.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, but the pacing, you have to, when you play the game enough, you have to understand the pacing that you have to say. It's like you can't go.
Right,
it's like,
sure.
Go,
and
rest, take it
okay,
easy, and try to tell a wargamer.
But
Yeah, and try to tell a wargamer, no, if you shoot your guns one more time, they won't do anything. But if you sit still for a turn, I can't shoot my gun.
That was my only thing with it. I will play it. Absolutely, I'll play it.
Oh, it's a fun set of rules. I mean, I remember we did this huge 200th anniversary of the Battle of Borodino with all these tables and all these computers and days, and it was magnificent. It was epic.
That is the one element of it that's good. It's almost like a stand back and kind of like focus on the figures, if you will.
Yeah,
and it kind of takes you a little bit. Yeah.
It was like the guys they did the guys last year. Was it last year, 2 years ago? Did the big thing in Glasgow? That massive
I saw that,
water game using black powder. Black powder is not my favorite set of rules. I'll play it. It's a nice set of rules.
Right.
But for what they were doing, that's perfect because it's not that hard, And again, I always said that people say, well, like in my Napoleonic Wars, you have buckets of dice. I say, look, when you roll a game where one die can make or break the game, like Africa Corps.
Right.
That's one thing. But when you're rolling, you're going to roll 50 dice over the course of half an hour. It's all going to even out.
That's reminding me of LaSalle too, by Sam Mustafa. Have you played?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The skirmish balloons of dice, which is fun. Yeah.
It's delightful. Yeah. I
like his rule sets.
Well, I hate dice towers. I love to have a box, or even better, a lucite box. Mm-hmm. And I can roll the dice, and they rattle, of course, for the action, and they bounce, and they sound like grape shot.
There you go. That's nice.
Well, I love buckets of dice. I'm happy with that.
So I'm going to steer us back to War and
Peace. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
So take me up through the.
Okay.
There was a 2020 version, right?
Okay.
That was Kickstarter.
Okay. So John Gant, his game, which TMG didn't do, I kept in contact with him. And John Compton of One Small Step Games likes my games. And he came to me and said, I would like to take your No Trumpets, No Drums Vietnam War game from the Wargamer magazine from 1980 and make a new version of it. Clean it up, make it pretty. And we did that. And then he said, I'd like to do your Holy Roman Empire. Same way. We did that. And I did two add-ons to that. Great Battles of the English Civil War, Great Battles of 30 Years' War. So you could there's the game, and you could fight the battles out in a set of rules, a very simple hex encounter, very stupid simple set of battle rules. He said, and I really want to do War and Peace. I said, well, you don't want to do the old War and Peace. You want to do John Gant's War and Peace.
Interesting.
And so I got to John Gant, and John and I got together, and we showed it to John Compton, and he loved it because the basic rules, all the rules of the game of the 5th and 6th edition, are the original rules from that board. If you've never, you can sit down with the new game with the board, put the pieces on there, not read the rules and play it. Right. Nothing has changed.
That's what I like about it. It's nice.
Yeah. And then John added a couple more scenarios. He added the Egyptian campaign, which is the delight. and he added the Italian campaign and Marengo, which is nice. It opens the game up, and the map is double the size, literally double the size of that
Hmm.
one. I'd open it up, but it would well, you've seen it, it's
Yeah, it takes it's a
it's
good table size map.
but it comes in it's in two pieces,
Uh-huh.
and most of the scenarios you only use part of one map. A few you use the middle of
Right,
two
it's usually
maps,
two maps
but
at a time.
but you can put all the charts and tables and stuff around it. So you can so if you're playing with this part of the game, you can put the pieces and charts and dice and stuff all around it and not have to worry about it. So it doesn't take up you don't have to have a second table. Uh, if you play the campaign, you need a lot of room. But no, so the all the game, all the original scenarios are there. The scenarios I wrote for the general magazine are there. They play exactly like they did. The hexes are exactly the only difference is the rivers go alongside hexes rather than through hexes.
Hmm.
Frank Davis, who did a great job developing War and Peace, talked me into doing rivers through the middle of hexes. If I could do one thing in my life different in gaming, I would have said no.
Interesting. Okay.
It complicates things.
Right.
You have to make rules.
Right.
If a river runs
Force.
along a hex side, you need one sentence. Cross
Okay.
the river, it costs you this. Boom,
Right.
da da.
Right. Exactly.
No two ways about it. And so yeah, so the game is the same. The campaign game, however, is totally different. It makes sense,
Okay.
and it has a great standalone naval campaign game. So you
Right. I
can
saw
just
that.
so you can just play as a naval gamer. You can just play ship,
Yeah, if
sail
you
around the
want.
world. The French want to sink commerce, the British want to sink the French.
Right, but you wanted to
You
have it
know,
mean something, so
yeah, it
it
means
might.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So campaign's good.
yeah, like and they can't, but you can just a pure naval campaign and it means
Right.
something. But
Right.
but you can marry it when you marry it with a land campaign,
Right.
of
Right.
course.
Right.
But I mean, I have to admit, the big full campaign is a lot. You really got that's why one of the nicest.
You almost have to vassal it. Sorry, but yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
well, see, like one of the things I really like about Avalon Digital because they came to us because Philippe, who runs Avalon Digital, it was the first war game he fell in love with.
Mm.
He's French, and he's a Gallic, just mwah. And he said, a big fan. Could I please computer? I said, my dream. And these
Yeah,
guys,
I was gonna ask that. Like, had you
Philippe
always
and
wanted to? Yeah.
Philippe and Cyril. I mean, I got guys in Paris and guys in Lyon. Things that are on my map.
All right.
Helping playing me. I'm playing right
Right.
now. I'm playing the Russian campaign with Cyril multiplayer. I'm losing. I'm the French, but what the hell. That's my fault. I tend to take chances, just like in miniatures games. A friend of mine says, if McLaughlin's general doesn't kill, he's not playing right. I kind of how many generals did McLaughlin get killed under him? So yeah, but we love it. But it's so nice because it's all up there on the computer, and it's so easy, and you move back and forth, and you see the pieces, and it's so
Right.
much better than
How
Vassal.
much how much feedback do you get from it in regards to its relationship to the rules, quotation marks? Like,
Okay,
is there
well,
any logging or anything?
Well, right now it's purely alpha testing in house
Okay.
because we got to make sure everything works before we open up to beta testers. Because and every day we find a computer bug, yeah, and Cyril will fix it in 24 hours. Like almost one he found yesterday about in the Spanish campaign we're playing. When Napoleon shows up in the end of 1808 with his pieces. There's a box of reinforcements. They don't fit in the box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we had to
So
change. All the little things.
right. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you're almost beyond. You're getting towards
Oh,
the alpha.
we're going down to okay,
Right.
okay. He can't in the combat. Well, I'll say something. This guy should be dead, not just retreating, or he's dead. All right, he's a D3, so he's dead. He shouldn't be there through the retreat phase because you should be able to take the hex and little things like that. I said we're down to
Is
the
the
little.
is there feedback in relationship to the game? Is it is a lot of the mechanics hidden at all? Is it more of
No,
just do
no.
it, do it, do it,
Well,
or is it pretty open?
it's very easy and very open. I mean, the rules are there. You can read the rules if you want.
Right.
Cyril's been working on tutorials this week.
Okay.
So they'd be like, as I said to him, I said, guys who know how to play the game is one thing, but guys who know how to play the board game still need to know what to do on the computer. And
Right,
guys
sure,
who
sure.
and
Yeah,
guys
interesting.
who've
And
never
but
played either one, they need to know, how do you do something? What does
right.
it do?
So
Um,
what I was kind of getting at there was more of the opposite almost, is how do you steer the digital gamers, again back to the board game, just because it deserves to be played,
well,
as well.
it
And
is it's the board, it's the board game on a computer.
right, and okay,
And right now you can play it both sides solo. You can play it hot seat. You can play with using Skype and shared screen. Like, I'll play a game with my friend Chris, and I put a shared screen up of the game on Steam, and I'll say, okay, you see my French move. Where do you want your Austrians to go? And I'll move them. We'll do that.
oh,
I We haven't done the AI yet, because you can't do the AI until you make sure everything works. Because otherwise, when you fix something that's for people to play with, it's much easier than having to fix it when you've told a computer to do something.
okay, yeah, okay,
So you save several steps.
right,
And so yeah, but right now we got the system. We're down to the minutia. I mean, really. I mean, all the basics of the moves work, supply works, attrition works, combat results work. Who dies is automated.
mm,
And it's automated, but you can change it. So like, it'll
okay,
say you have to lose 3 strength points. 2 of them have to be morale 2. One has to be the
right,
morale. It'll
right,
show you who dies,
okay,
and you can either accept it, or you can go, no, I want him to die instead.
okay,
So
perfect, okay,
if you
yeah,
it's like if you have, like, you know Russians and Prussians together, or Austrians, it's like, no, I want all the Russians to die.
yeah,
Things
okay,
like that. Uh,
right,
and we got the partisans fine to work, because the partisan rules are there's no partisan rules per se in the rule book. They're embedded in 2 scenarios: the 2 Spanish scenarios, and the 1814 scenario. And so, to make sure the computer knows how to do the partisans, I'm doing the Spanish thing, for example, and okay, there's rules. Partisans are very hard to catch if they're in rough terrain. You have to surround them, pretty much. So if they're in open, as long as they can run away unless you have a cavalryman, and to get the computer to recognize that, now it does. That's the level we're at, as far as getting things right. And we have 11 scenario. No, sorry, take it. We have 12 of the scenario. No, 12 of the scenarios are up for alpha testing. The next one he has to add is the Egyptian campaign, because that uses a little mini map that's in the side
right,
that's not in the original, and that's in a mini map that's in the corner of the big Eastern
the
map.
large, yep,
And that has some special rules, and it also has a special optional naval rules, and we haven't done anything with naval rules so far, because none of the scenarios have
yeah,
anything to do with
exactly, the scenarios
navies.
don't, right,
Yeah,
yeah,
the Navy stuff was all with the campaign game. Although there's an optional to take the Egyptian campaign as a naval campaign and a land campaign at the same time. So you can have, will the French get to Egypt at all? Will they be intercepted? Or if the French get to
interesting,
Egypt, will Nelson sink them? And so.
right,
In addition to the fighting off Murad Bey and the
mm,
Mamelukes and stuff. So yeah, so it's a lot of minutia, and I have a bunch of guys who want to be beta testers. One of them's name is Peter Robbins, and I've sent the list to those guys in France, and it'll be their call as to who gets to be that, which ones and they'll consult with me on that at the time. I don't know how many beta testers they're going to want. That's up to them. I play computer games. I used to write reviews about computer games. I tried once 25 years ago to make a computer game.
hmm, yeah, right,
And
it's a different skill
it's
set,
a
yeah,
whole
so, yeah,
different skill set. And
yeah,
I went to computer classes, and I got to work with a couple of guys, board gamers, who tried to do, because at that time we were working on Atari 800s and Commodore 64s, which your watch has more memory than those things had. But still, I mean, the computer games are such a work of art now, and they take the days of one guy sitting in a garage making a computer game. There's still some of that indie around, but the expectation of computer gamers is they want something gorgeous. So
right,
you
okay,
need a whole team. You need a whole team.
right,
So even like my board games, I always work with an editor. as a writer, as a journalist, as a novelist, as a game designer, I would never presuppose that my work is written in letters of gold on granite. Because what I've written, I might understand, doesn't mean you're going to understand it. And that's what an editor's job is. And a good editor, and like Fred Schachter was my editor for all my GMT games. Um, Frank Davis was the editor for this one. John Gant served as both a co-designer and editor for the new War and Peace because he had written so much of it and used so much of it. And like John and I have double co-billing. We share the
Yeah, I saw that.
royalties.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way because I said, John, you made this happen. You made up the campaign part of the game. You served as the editor. You did so much of the donkey work, and I said you deserve as much credit as I do, if not more. And you deserve, and yeah, we're splitting the royalties because I would have it no other way because I that's so much is important to me.
So
And same
what?
with artists. And artists, you need a good artist. You need a good and we got like we had Antonio Pinar, who did beautiful artwork. I mean the uniforms. And Antonio was so good. Every time he would do a counter, he would say, "Is this the right uniform? Is this the right flag?" And I come back and say, "No, that's not the Saxon flag. That's the flag of the Saxon Republic in the Weimar Republic, the Roman." And no, nobody wore pink. And only selected guys wore purple. He's a wonderful artist, and so he went over every hex of the board with a map and make comments and stuff like that with with John. He went over every counter with me, and then Michael and John at One Small Step, they produced the hell out of it, and they took it all the way through Kickstarter and production and marketing and boxing and shipping and all that kind of stuff. And they did a great job.
So what do you feel is the lasting appeal of War and Peace?
It's Napoleon.
Hmm.
That's it.
Okay.
Period. It's if this was Uncle Wiggily Goes to Moscow, no. This is okay. It's the old story of if you remember the original Avalon Hill games, the whole marketing was it's Waterloo, June 1815. You are there. It's Gettysburg, 1863. You are there. The whole idea is when you get in and you play this game, most games you take on a persona, but here you play my game for an afternoon. You're Wellington, you're Napoleon, you're Kutuzov. If you're less lucky, you're an Austrian. But you get to be that.
Charles gets a bad rap. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, Charles in my game was a very good general. So the rest of it, it's his fan club. His fan club is lousy. But no, it's the idea is like there's a great book by Faulkner. Well, what did Faulkner write that wasn't great? It's called The Last Babylon, and there's a section in there. That's one of my favorite passages. For every Southern boy, it's 1 o'clock on a July afternoon, and looking up that long. And this time, Martha Robert, we're going to make it up that long, low slope to the copse of trees. And it's the same thing. So it's why you play. How many times have you played Waterloo in any version, miniature, board, computer, card, whatever? Because it's 11 o'clock on that June day in 1815, and this time we're going to make it to Brussels. And that's the appeal. It's the appeal is, and of course, I mean, look at this. I mean, this is a hoodie, but the real thing. You put this hoodie on, or even just a regular shirt, and you imagine yourself with a plumed hat. You imagine yourself with this on your head, and you're waving the sword. Mes amis, en avant. And it gets.
Don't take out your ceiling work.
It gets the heart pumping. It gets you know why? It's because you want to be this guy. You want to be that guy.
Right.
That's from Abel Gance's 1927 Napoleon, which is a magnificent movie. I got to see it at the Kennedy Center with Carmine Coppola and a full orchestra.
All right. One question for you.
Yes.
Would Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon have been better than Waterloo?
Well, we only have bits and pieces of Kubrick's to look at, so you can't tell it. Obviously, Kubrick was knew Abel Gance's work and was a fan of it. And if you watch the silent movie with the music, you can't help but get into it. And the final thing, when Napoleon is there, he's crossed the Alps. It leaves beneath him. The whole French army of Italy is marching through the Alps, and all of a sudden, from one screen, which is in black and white, it goes to a triptych. Two screens open up on the side. One is blue, one is white, one is red. The tricolor and the Marseillaise. And if you're not crying,
It's basically like it's the equivalent of Jodorowsky's Dune, right?
oh,
So
yeah, exactly. And
it's better in our imagination than it
yeah,
probably ever.
and now Ridley Scott's Napoleon, I think, is going to be interesting. He's the one with Joaquin Phoenix being
Oh
Napoleon.
yeah,
I've
yeah, I
seen
just
bits
saw
and
that.
pieces of that, and I think it's going to be pretty good. Now, there's two miniseries actually I just finished watching,
Yes,
the Napoleon Josephine love story, which I
right.
know is schmaltzy, but
Yeah,
Armand Assante did a great
it's
job,
yes, he's great. He's great.
and Jacqueline Bisset. When my
Yes.
wife was younger, I always thought she looked like Jacqueline Bisset's twin sister, and I still in my heart do.
Okay.
And I've married 44 and a half years to a gorgeous woman. I got lucky. Very much like this game, I got right place, right time. And actually, I met my wife because of gaming. I can tell you that later. Not she doesn't game. I met her because she shared a house with a brother of a guy I game with,
Yeah, there you
and I slept on that guy's couch one night, and this gorgeous woman comes out in the morning and says, "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing on my couch?"
go.
And if it hadn't been for that, I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have two gorgeous, wonderful children. I wouldn't be as happy as a man as I am. And again, because you know what? Because of wargaming, because of going to Georgetown, because of that article in Time Magazine, it all goes back. I mean, if you look at you, I'm one of those people who I can see the turning points in my life and
Mm,
how they led somewhere. And if
mm,
any one of them, it's like the old Churchill thing: for want of a nail, the horse was lost. For one of the nail, the shoe was lost. For one of the shoe, the horse was lost. For one of the horse, the rider was lost. For one of the rider, the battle was lost. And I'm the same sort of thing. If any one of those nails had been missing, and again, my wife, I married my wife. We came back from our honeymoon, and my key didn't work in my office door. And she got to her office and found that her assistant had been promoted to her boss, given her office and double her salary. She walked out. The day, our first day back from honeymoon, we met home, both of us unemployed. That's the day I wrote to Avalon Hill saying, I got some time on my hands. I want to go see you guys.
mm. Very good.
And
Yes.
I designed the first part of War and Peace on unemployment while I was looking for a job in the meantime. But yeah.
So where to from here? What do you have in your brain? What do you have floating around your brain? What are the next? What's the next one or two games that you have always wanted to make that you think you might not ever
Okay,
make?
well,
Really?
Hannibal's Revenge is on the P500 on GMT, and that takes
Fun.
my Hitler's Reich system to the Punic Wars. I'm a big fan of Hannibal. I don't like Romans. I think if I was a Roman, I would have stood with Brutus, not Caesar. And I like the Carthaginians. They're cool.
Right.
And
Right.
that's on there. And the ancient civilizations of East Asia is the next going to be a game in that series. That's in a box in pieces. The maps in sections in a box on my table.
In
I haven't,
prototype. Yeah.
yeah, I haven't gotten to that, because I've been doing everything else and proofing things right. And I'm working on the sixth novel in the Throne of Darius series. So I've got a lot of things I'm juggling right now, and I have an idea file of things I want to do. Like I designed an Ancient Civilizations at War card game, which takes
Mm,
all the civilizations from all my
interesting.
civilian games, and so like you have a deck of cards and you play on a table when you on a little grid, and you put down terrain, you put down cards for phalanxes and legions in general.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
I've been playtesting that with a couple of my friends. The guy who co-designed my Ancient Civ games, Chris Waterbrug, is also on that. And Chris and I actually met at Georgetown.
Mm,
I was pushing soldiers on the floor of the dorm, and he walked by, and we became friends. And we've been friends to this day. He's godfather to my son. He is every game I've ever done. He's either been a partial editor, a co-editor, a co-designer, a playtester, or in the case of the Spanish Armada game, Invincible Armada, a technical advisor. Because what Chris knows about naval wargaming, okay, what I know about navies, okay, here's a piece of paper. What Chris knows about navies is the paper. What I know is the dot in the middle of the page. Like he went to the Naval War College, and he married a Navy nurse, a Navy commander. And Chris. He also plays miniatures, by the way. He lives in Virginia. Hell of a nice guy. One of my two best friends in the world. But we worked together. We played games together every at least once a week when I was in DC for over 25 years. And he still, when I was in Connecticut, he'd come to visit me once in a while, and I'd visit him in Virginia. Uh, Up until COVID, we were doing a visit each visit a year. Um, the last time I saw him in person was just before COVID. He came up, and we played a whole bunch of board games and miniatures for like 5 days.
We were talking about this before we went live. The effects of COVID on gaming in general, and we both kind of came to similar conclusions throughout that you just had to you I played more. Exactly like you said. I remember saying to somebody, I said, I've played more in the last 2 years than I've played in the last two
Yeah,
decades.
yeah, and I mean, I play online. I play
Right,
asynchronous, where I make a turn, and 6 hours later you make a turn. I got a whole bunch of games going on. It's usually I have two or three games at a time. I play
right.
Vassal now and then.
I have way too
I
many.
there's two guys I play with, one on Monday and one on Thursday for 2 hours. We go online and we play. I play with my son online. My son moved from Boston to Oregon. When he was in Boston, I would go up to Boston once a month, and we'd have a day of Boston Burger Battle Day. I go to Boston, we get a burger, we fight a battle. And sometimes we go to the bunker, the hobby bunker, and buy stuff that we, he's in Oregon now. They lived there 18 months ago. So I had, until last month, I hadn't seen him to game again. And he came out here just himself without his wife to see and we spent a week together, and we gamed. Oh, did we game? We just, and last night, actually, I was gaming with him 11 o'clock last night. We were killing Nazis together, because I had a tough day yesterday with my wife in the hospital and everything. And you know, if there's one thing that's going to make your day, it's kill some Nazis.
There you go. There you
It's the next best thing to killing Confederates.
go.
I had
Don't
an
say that
answer.
too loud
No,
down where
no,
I'm at.
no, no,
No, I'm
no,
just
no.
kidding. I'm from,
I had.
yeah, as I said, I'm from New
I know
York.
you're North Carolina. I had an ancestor in the Irish Brigade,
Mm,
69th New York.
mm.
He was wounded 5 times, all of them intentionally, so that he could go home to New York to spend in the arms of his wife, the legendary beauty Ellen Ryan McLaughlin, who my daughter Ryan is named after. Um, and he was one of the guys who one of the, as my great aunt says, he's the reason we won World War II. I said, "Yeah, that was two. I said, it's 100 years difference. Says, no. I mean, this is how Irish families think. Say, your ancestor, he was in the Irish Brigade. When the war was over, he was in the Fenian Boys. And one night they were drinking, and they said, wouldn't it be a grand idea if we invade Canada, take the St. Lawrence Canal, and hold it hostage for Irish freedom? And sure enough, 5,000 American Civil War veterans invade Canada. They bring one cannon. The British are waiting for them, because the second in command of the Fenians was a British agent. And there's 24 cannon and 2,000 militia. It was a very short battle. But the British and American governments were in the middle of the Alabama claims, very contentious, because of the Civil War and all that. Both the American and British governments rushed to each other saying, no, there's no war. We didn't kill Americans. They were Irish. And no, they're not Americans in Canada. They're Irish. We don't want this. That led to the Rush-Bagot Agreement, the largest unfortified border in the world, the rapprochement between America and Britain, which means in World War I, we fought on the side of the British, and therefore in World War II, we fought on the side of the British, and therefore, because of your ancestor, we beat Hitler.
There you go.
That's how Irish,
Nice.
that is how Irish families think. Now, as far as the Carolina thing goes, I have a friend, Chip. He's in South Carolina, and Chip Durant, and he paints beautiful miniatures. He loves Civil War, and he always wants to be the rebels, and he talks like one. But as he said to me one time, Mark, I love painting my rebels, but they got to have somebody to beat. So what I do is I got to paint some Yankees. So what I do is I take all my Confederate regiments and I turn them around so they can't see what I'm doing. And then I take,
That's funny.
it's a true story. Then I take the Yankees and I prong them. But before I put the blue coats on, I paint a little yellow stripe down the back of each one of them so that I know they're all yellow inside. True story. True story. True story.
Well, Charleston has kept the plates for the Confederate money, by the way. So just in case, just in case.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any one conflict or a time period that you've wanted to create a war game for, but just never had an opportunity or never had an epiphany to create something unique for?
Yeah, it's hard because I mean I've done ancients, I've done Romans, Carthaginians, I've done I've done the Holy Roman 30 Years of War stuff. I've done Civil War, um, land and naval. I've done World War II. I've done Napoleonics. I've never done a game set in the Middle Ages, knights and crusaders, and which is a period I enjoy, but doesn't really sing to me the way stuff either side of it. Like I love the 30 Years War. Not that I love the 30 Years War, but I love all the pageantry and cool stuff of the 30 Years
Right,
War
right.
because you have such a mix of stuff. You have guys with swords, pikes, bows, crossbows, cannons, handguns. You have all the stuff in the Middle Ages plus, and then of course the ancients because I mean I have 82 chariots in 15 millimeter.
What are what are some elements in modern board games that you admire most that you probably would never use necessarily in one of your own games, but that you enjoy playing? Like, I'll just put out there like the coin-based games,
Oh,
and
look,
just what we're
I know Volko. Volko
uh,
actually was a roommate, a guy I worked for years. He and Volko were like this. He was Volko and he went to college together. And Volko actually, I used to run a game called a deception game. I used to run for different government agencies and military bases where it was a role playing game. I had a map of France in 1944 plus England and all the areas, Scandinavia, and the playing pieces were X pieces. But every player, and there were 20 players, was a character. You were Eisenhower, you were De Gaulle, you were Rommel, whatever. And so I used to run that game, which is called Deception and Discovery, because it was to teach people how to to try how to deceive the other guy and how to uncover the deception. And that was good not just in for the war for the D-Day in the game, but how to do it if you're in finance, if you're in journalism, if you're whatever you're in. And Voco actually played in one of my games, and he got to gun down the American spies.
nice.
No, so no, the coin games are brilliant. I really think they're charming and they're fun and they're cool. And I love the cards. I love card based games. I mean, I love to have and I like it, because every game is different. That's one of the nice things about games, either card driven games or games with cards. Is that every game is different. I did for Avalon Hill General. I did write up what I called a soul for war and peace. It's in one of the general issues, which was you take a deck of cards, and it was going to be just face cards. I'm just Hoyle playing cards,
Hmm.
and have a deck of cards, and you would shuffle them up, and you would deal cards out, and each of the cards would mean something, because Avalon Hill was not going to print a deck of playing cards in the general magazine, but an article where, okay, if you have the Queen of Hearts, this is what it does. And I really kind of wanted to put that in a couple of years after I did War and Peace. And I've been talking to the French guys because they want to know if they ever could do what DLCs they could add to the game. And I said,
Interesting.
well, I have several DLCs that we could talk about, which could be either if we did 2 editions of the game, the board game, through Kickstarter. With Kickstarter, you can't just do a reprint. You have to do something different. The only difference between 5th and 6th edition is a couple typos, 2 counters, which are back printed as transports, and one little sticker that goes on the map. But that was enough for Kickstarter to agree, okay, it's a different game. To
Hmm.
do a 7th, we have to add something. And I suggested either a deck of cards or a half deck of cards, not the article with it, go buy your deck of cards, but I mean, actually make some cards for it,
Right. Sure.
which would again be a pretty optional rule, or a War of 1812 scenario with a mini map.
Okay.
So and John Gant had said, well, we could also do the Wars of the French Revolution. All we would need to do is maybe like a couple of different general counters, so you'd have Kellerman and those guys. So we had a whole bunch of ideas that we could do if there's ever going to be a 7th board edition, or if we want to do DLCs with a computer version.
Right. Well,
And it's
experience. I mean, that's where you can experiment with it, right?
Yeah,
For
exactly.
on the cheaper before you produce it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I mean, because yeah, when you start getting into a board game, you have all the physical components and you have all the printing
Yeah,
and the
we were
shipping.
again we were chatting a little bit about Tabletop Simulator in particular. That's a brilliant prototype
Oh,
system.
uh,
I can only see that. I'm just a lot of new games are being prototyped there. Obviously, I
okay,
think.
okay. I
And
have on Tabletop Simulator, besides Battle Masters, which I play with my son, which is the old Milton
right.
Bradley game with the orcs and knights and and trolls. I've also played Blood Bowl on it. I've
Mm.
played a whole bunch of old SPI games on it. I've played some of my games on it. I've played the wooden block Napoleon on it. It actually used the version I played has plastic pieces on it on the tabletop simulator. Um, and I've even played miniatures games. I've done Art de la Guerre and Flames of War on they've done such beautiful jobs of making models and maps and measuring devices. Again, you have to do everything yourself. It's even more so than Vassal. Vassal doesn't
Right.
do
It's
very.
definitely it's just a more of a pure. It's almost more of a pure
It's a pure
facsimile.
sandbox. It's
Yeah.
a pure sandbox. Where like in with the most you get with tabletop simulator is a deck shuffler or a dice roller.
The one thing I have to applaud most modern board game companies and gaming companies is that they're a lot more open to have tabletop simulator modules and vassal modules. I think
Well, well,
that's a brilliant marketing move. Um,
they discovered that a lot of guys will buy a game and don't have somebody to play with. But
right.
if they want to play the game electronically, well, they want to have the rules, and they don't want to have to look them up on a PDF.
That's where I think companies have not potentially grabbed a market, because I think there might even be a market for let me pay 20 or 30 bucks for your rules, and then 20, maybe 10 or 15 bucks for a professionally developed
Well,
module.
yeah.
I don't know if we're there yet,
Well,
but
the only thing about that is you undercut the sales of the physical game.
right,
Uh,
but this but I would argue,
in
yeah.
in our industry, look at that. In our
Yeah.
industry, like War and Peace, first printing for War and Peace was 15,000 back in 1978. All right. Over the course of all the different versions, it's sold probably 50,000 copies all told. Because there was a second printing, and then and then actually I got a check from Hasbro when Hasbro bought it at Avalon Hill, and I sent the check back. I said, guys, I signed a deal with a royalty percentage for 5 years as opposed to for life, because I got twice the royalty for 5 years as opposed to the smaller percentage for life, because the most of sales of a game are in the first year or two,
Hmm.
if not the
Hmm.
first 6 months. Even then, when there's only a handful of games coming out every 6 months. Um, but now, I mean, 2,000 3,000 copies of a print run is a big deal for a GMT or somebody else like that. A shorter print run for smaller guys. They might do multiple runs. I think was it one of the biggest selling games that GMT has sold maybe 10,000 copies. Which is that's a lot for GMT. But like for example, Hasbro originally, when Hasbro bought Avalon Hill, they gave back the rights to almost every game except for 10 games. They kept the rights to 10 games. One of them was my Napoleonic Wars, and I got to pitch. I got to pitch to the majors. I got to go up to Hasbro and give them the pitch. And they brought a guy in named Stephen Baker from England, who was the guy actually designed the Battle Masters, by the way. And he was my editor, and we were working together. And we got very close to having it become a Hasbro game. Would have been the Hasbro Avalon Hill Wizards of the Coast label. But they had a change. But I get called in by Mike Gray, who was head of the division at the time, and Mike Gray had family portraits on his wall. If you look closely, the family portraits were Colonel Mustard, Miss Green, and Miss Scarlet. And he said, "Mark, I hate to tell you, the suits have changed the rules." He said I told him, I said, look how well Battlecry did. It sold 250,000 units, and they said for the amount of time and money you put into Battlecry, 6 months, so 250,000, we can put 2 weeks of time and a fraction of the money to take a Disney movie knockoff and sell 2 million,
Hmm.
or yet another Monopoly
Hmm.
knockoff,
Hmm.
or another a Scrabble knockoff. So they said, so I'm sorry. And because like to Avalon Hill, well, to any modern game designer, 250,000 would be a brilliant, amazing amount of games. To Hasbro, it was chump change.
Right.
And Richard Borg, whom I know very well, and I love Richard Borg's games, Memoir
Yep.
44
Yep.
and
Yep.
Battle Cry. Actually, I played Battle Cry when it was still Command and Color Civil War, a miniatures game
Right.
with miniatures at an Avalon Hill convention. He did Memoir 44. I talked to the guys at Wizards of the Coast, sorry, the guys at Days of Wonder at a toy fair, and they were doing the train game, the Ticket to Ride.
Ticket Ride. Yeah.
And I said, "Aren't you going to do some more Richard's games?" He says, "Mark," he says, "Richard's games, sold 150,000 copies of Memoir 44. The very first Ticket to Ride sold 3 times that. It's economics of scale. We can't justify putting that money in." And that's the difference between having a publicly owned company and a privately owned company.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a publicly owned company where you have shareholders, you have to do things differently than you can if you're private.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the brilliant things about GMT, if you think of it, GMT basically invented Kickstarter. Because that's what the P500 is. The P500 is Kickstarter. Is you pledge your money to buy a game. When they raise enough money to fund the game, then it goes into production. So right away they got their nut covered.
No, right,
They're,
exactly.
And so there's no, because what killed SPI, and my friend Fred Schachter, the editor for my GMT games, who was one of the original guys at SPI in New York, but back when he had hair, when Mark Herman, and all that guys, he said at SPI we were always chasing the last game, so we put up with a game, and we had to make money from that to pay for the game before it. So we were always running in the red and always borrowing ahead.
Right.
And when it came to when you had a dud, everything collapsed. Whereas GMT, if they have a dud, that's too bad, but it's all paid for. There's no risk.
Yeah.
And most of the and GMT also was one of the first really kind of virtual companies. Very few people work for GMT full time. All right, so they don't have that high overhead, and we all have day jobs. And it's like I always tell people,
especially with some of these like Kickstarter stuff. I mean, if you have access to the rules by having been a part of the Kickstarter, otherwise, then you can tell it's not a dud too. You kind of like you're investing in something that you have a good feeling about, or just know you will enjoy playing.
And the same thing with the P500 stuff on GMT. Every time we do something, we put up an article about what we're doing. So you'll see, here's some artwork, here's some map work, here's some rules, here's some playtesters did an after action report. So you have some idea, a teaser of what you're going to get. So when you when you make your bet, you place your bet, and of course you're not
board game gambling. That's a new industry.
Well, it kind of is, if you think. But because it's not a gamble, because if the game doesn't get produced, you don't get charged.
Mm-hmm.
And the only gamble is am I going to get my money's worth?
Yeah.
And of course,
and probably more often than not, you absolutely do.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's because I have several Kickstarters that I've backed. I have games I'll play once or twice a year, if that. But I wanted them badly, like After the Empire or Great Wall of China, or I love the Britannia with the plastic pieces. Oh my God! Because by the way, Avalon Digital did a gorgeous job computerizing Avalon Hill's Britannia. I was one of the alpha testers. It's brilliant. And I won a tournament in '84 at Atlanticon for Britannia. I love Britannia, and they did a brilliant job. I helped at recreating the AI. So like the AI, the Romans invasion it's very well scripted. They know what to do, and some of the computer players I can't beat. It's really, the AI is brilliant. This company has got brilliant AI for their carrier battles game, for their North Africa game. These guys, they know their stuff. They're smart.
I was going to ask you whether or not they had a pretty good AI baseline.
Yeah, they have a very good AI baseline. I mean, we haven't developed the AI for War and Peace yet, because you have to get everything else. But at least you have first. But they had great. I mean, if the AI and Britannia comes to War and Peace, I'm going to lose a lot. And I wrote the game. So no, I'm stoked.
Before we end, I'm going to put up a couple things that folks have said. We've had some viewers, by the way.
Oh,
So James,
how
what PC?
kind of you,
Yeah.
James. How kind.
A lot of
Yeah.
people say this, and I totally understand why. I mean, there's an absolute lasting appeal to War and Peace. It's um,
Well,
uh,
every game is different, and every game you get to be Napoleon or not,
right. And then
or the
Steve with Little Big Wars has shown up, and he also says, "Yeah,
oh, cool. Oh, thank you. Oh, these guys, these guys are making my night. Yeah,
right." Well, we're a little bit beyond what I wanted to. I could talk with you forever, but
sure.
so again, what are the next steps with digital? I know y'all had mentioned roughly an August release, but you were thinking probably it'll more than
Well,
likely be ahead of
yeah, we have when you put it up on Steam, you
that.
have to give them a date, and to be safe, we went for a year. All right, because I don't know how you feel, but if you've seen games says we're going to have this game out April 15th, now it's going to be April 30th, now we're going to be July 2nd, you start to lose interest very
Oh yeah,
very
sure,
much.
absolutely.
But if we say coming August 23rd, sorry, August 2023. Oh, by the way, it's June. It's done. Yeah, for the anniversary of Waterloo. So again, it gives us the cushion
Flexibility. Yeah,
and flexibility because really, until we play test the AI, and we don't want to come out with something half-assed.
right.
It wants to be good. The only thing is how much of the game will come out with AI originally, and will we have to add DLCs, or will we get the whole damn thing done in time? I would like to get everything done in time, but you got to figure the campaign game that could be up to 120 turns long. That's a
Right.
lot of play. That's a lot of play testing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, scenarios you can do a scenario in 2 hours. Even multiplayer, you can do it back and forth, done in 2 hours. But the campaign game, that's a lot.
Yeah,
And to
I almost feel like, well, whatever. I don't want to put you
Well,
down, but
I know,
yeah,
no, and the rules work. The rules work, but to tell the AI how to play, that's a whole different
I
story.
almost feel like if they kept the price right on the core standard game, and kept that price right, and then you paid for a
Yeah,
campaign, I don't know. That's my
that.
suggestion.
Well, first of all, that's not my decision. That's
Right,
theirs.
totally,
And
entirely.
second of all, it depends where we are.
Right.
As I said, because I said to do an AI, you want an AI that can fight and fight smart.
Sure, and
You
that's the
know,
core of the game. So
and
yes, concentrate
yeah,
on that. Yeah, sure.
and cause, I mean, you can play the game solo against yourself, and it makes a lot of sense. Because there's no hidden movement unless you want to play an optional rule. So you can play it solo, but you want to play with people, or you want to play with an AI or a mix of people and AI. And to make strategic decisions on a campaign game, that's a whole different ball of wax than making tactical decisions on like you're outside of Vienna. Do I defend Vienna? Do I attack Vienna? There's an AI tree there. But if it's the winter between two turns, what do I build? Whose side do I join? What do I do? For the AI as a player, that's a whole lot. It's a whole different set of code. It's like I wrote for my ancient civilizations games. I did a set of solo rules for both games. A guy I knew, Vezar Ponen, a Finnish smart guy who teaches at Christian Anhalt University in Germany. He came up with the solo system for Hitler's Reich. Right, and I've adjusted that, but the one I have for my ancient civ games is different. It's a list, like if one, if two, if three. I married the two of them for Hannibal's Revenge, so I take bits of his plus bits of mine. But we're talking about area movement games, all right, or where you never have a decision more than A or B. Like, what card do I play? I got 5 cards in my hand. Well, you tell the AI, play the card that gives you money, play the card that places pieces, play the card that kills people. That's easy. But when you're talking about, do I move 7 or 12 infantrymen here? How many should the land were, and what number of cavalry should I take, and who should lead them? All right, you got to tell the AI how to do that, and that's not in my bailiwick. But there are guys who know how to do that. I mean, there are guys who are brilliant at that. They're mathematicians
And there
and
could, I mean,
artists.
yeah, there could be existing sets of AI that they've already
Yeah,
worked on that can
yeah,
be manipulated to handle that.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, and these guys know AI. Every game they've
absolutely.
had has got very strong AI,
Hmm.
and they're committed to it. I said Philippe, the owner of
Go
the
for it.
company,
Yep.
who, by the way, is summering in Corsica.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. He has a place in Corsica, not far from you know whose house, and he's there right now for 15 days. He's the guy who came to me because he loves this game, and he's committed to making this game the game he loves. So we're
That
not
sounds
we're
brilliant.
so we're not. This is as much a labor of love as a board game design
And I
is.
think it will absolutely drive the potential board game sales. So if you can somehow time another Kickstarter for what you said before for a seventh edition with maybe some card
Yeah,
expansion,
yeah, we've actually had discussions back and forth on that,
right?
and when there's and I said this is more it's definitely on the table. It's not decided yet because we're trying to do one thing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's definitely on the table, and a lot of it
But
depends
use
on
I
how
would
long.
say heck, I would say use the digital edition to test the waters on it and get it
Yeah.
perfect,
Oh,
and
definitely.
then and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely because there's less risk involved.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's what I was getting at before is that digital. Personally, this is just my personal opinion. I feel like, oh yeah, yeah, Steve. Before we were talking about potentially adding event cards to War and Peace. Um, digital feeds. I think digital feeds face to face. For me, it's the fact that you're able to play it more often. You're able to save it with friends
yeah.
around the
Oh,
world,
yeah.
and then, but it absolutely makes me ravenous to go
Hmm.
play it with people
Oh, yeah.
locally.
Oh, yeah.
And
Because I mean, because as much fun as it is to play
yeah,
a game online, it's much more fun to be with people.
same
It's
thing with
sort
miniatures. I mean,
Well, it's sort of like another activity that some of us do a lot online and would rather do in person. But PG rated. You want to what's on video will get you excited, but you want to do it with people. And gaming is the same way. You want. I mean, there's nothing. You sit there and you see the guy's face, and you pat him on the back, and you roll the dice, and you're eating pizza,
right?
and
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to lose that, and I don't. We
oh
never will. We never
no,
will.
it's.
But
I mean, wargaming. Well, gaming is a social aspect. You know, all my best friends, and actually most of my friends in my life that I've met and made have been through gaming. Because of gaming, I have my career. Because of gaming, I met my wife. I have my children. Gaming is an integral part of me. If I couldn't game, I don't know what I do because it's not just the intellectual challenge and the camaraderie and the fun. It's just I'm so wrapped up in the
yeah, it makes
people.
lifelong friendships.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
Absolutely.
it really does. Um, that's why I love gaming. And like I know, like my son still plays D&D. He has a group of guys, men and women who come to his house. His wife likes to play D&D as well. I used to run D&D games for him and his buddies when they were younger. Um, and my friend Bill, who's my age, still runs. He's been playing a D&D game for 30 years with the same people. I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons player. I want to build. I want to lead an army. That's why I don't play the Sharps Practice and Chain of Command as much. I like them, but that's why I like Flames of War because I've got tanks and artillery and infantry and jeeps and machine guns. And same thing with War and Peace. I got an army. I got an empire. I can go conquer Russia or try. You know, um, you know.
All right. On that note, I think we'll probably wrap up. Sorry,
Well, it was
I
an
kept you
absolute.
long. Yeah,
Oh, I could stay all night. It's an absolute pleasure.
yeah.
It's an absolute delight. I could talk gaming
You have a
until
lot of
I'm.
fans that have shown up, and I'm sure
Well,
we'll watch it after the fact. So.
all you guys. I mean, you guys. All the love on Facebook. I'm on Facebook for gaming. I do post a little bit on politics on Facebook because I'm a human, but most of my stuff on Facebook is about games and books I write. And most people I know on there are just damn nice people who say
Mhm.
lovely things or ask cool questions.
Yeah.
And Facebook's been great. I've actually made friends to game with through Facebook.
That's right.
Um,
Right.
so it's again, it's my Friday night guys I sit down with. It's my one Saturday a month guys I play board games with that really make it for me.
Right.
So well,
Well,
Viva
thank you very
l'Empereur.
much.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you so much for the invitation. I had a lovely time, and I'll give you a quick toast to the Courvoisier.
Yeah. All right.
Viva l'Empereur.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.